As you know, a major aspect of what we talk about is reaching a higher level of consciousness, both individually and collectively. We know and we've seen that humanity is no longer really evolving very much physically, but rather it's taking part in the level of consciousness and both as a collective as well. So the question is, what level of human are you? And that's exactly what we're going to be taking a look at today as we actually read an excerpt from a fiction book that's very interesting indeed called God Debris. And what this book called God Debris is about, which I highly recommend, by the way, it's about an individual who encounters a mysterious old man. And this mysterious old man begins to tell this person a story about how God killed himself or committed suicide, and that was the Big Bang, was the suicide, the shattering of God, and everything around you are now the pieces or God debris. And so in this book we're going to be reading an excerpt called The Fifth Level, which talks about the 5 levels of humans. Now, of course, this is a fiction book. However, it's written in a way that is supposed to get across a very real idea, and we can learn from it and find very many strong parallels in Hyperianism and everything that we talk about on this channel. So it's going to be really good. Buckle up. Now, I want to remind you that what we are reading is fiction, but there's a lot of interesting parallels and things that we can learn from it. So just remember, I'm not saying that everything in here is correct, but I'll be pointing out what we can learn from and take away from this, because it's very interesting. You'll see what I mean. Just go with me here. You'll see. 5th level. Who are you? I asked. I didn't know how to phrase the question politely. The old man certainly wasn't normal. I'm an avatar. Is that some sort of title? I thought it was your name. It's both. Excuse me for asking this. I don't really know how to phrase it, so I'm just going to come out and say it. You want to know if I'm human. Now, real quick, I want to say, in this story, Avatar is considered the highest level of human level, the highest human level. But I just want to remind you guys real quick, in Hyperianism, that's not the case. We have the Avatar, monadic, and absolute perspectives. And the avatar perspective is the perspective of you as a body. So just remember, this is different than Hyperianism, especially with regard to avatar. But anyway, let's continue. So the old man says, you want to know if I'm human? And the guy replies, yeah, I apologize if that sounds crazy. It's just that. The old man waved off the end of my sentence. I understand. Yes, I am human. I am a 5th level human. An avatar. 5th level? People exist at different levels of awareness. An avatar is one who lives at the 5th level. Now remember, this is really important from Hyperianism, because the same thing is with regard to what we show. Remember that humanity has pretty much ceased to evolve genetically and biologically. We are now evolving with regard to consciousness and information and as a collective. And so humanity, even though we more or less share the same bodies, people are at vastly different levels of awareness, vastly different levels of consciousness. And most people don't understand this. Most people think that the majority of humanity, they're at the same level of awareness, more or less. They think, oh yeah, maybe intelligence varies, but pretty much everyone is at the same level of awareness, and that's not the case at all. There are drastically different levels of awareness between human beings. Drastically different, dramatically different. And when you reach a higher level of awareness and you interact with a lot of people, you'll begin to notice this, because you'll see that you sort of hit a wall or a barrier when interacting with another person. You'll be trying to explain a certain concept to them, or try to get them to see reality in a certain way, and they're not able to do it. They're incapable. It's like they hit a wall. And so it's very important to realize that humanity is at vastly different levels of awareness. And Hyperionism is here to bring humanity to the next level, and the world itself as a collective to the next level as well. And it's very, very, very important to understand in Hyperionism, the avatar, absolute, and monadic perspectives. Now, I know it's a little confusing because we say avatar, but the way they describe avatar in this is different, so please keep that in mind. So, the man asks the old man, is awareness like intelligence? I asked. No, intelligence is a measure of how well you function within your level of awareness. Your intelligence will stay about the same over your life. Awareness is entirely different from intelligence. Awareness involves recognizing your delusions for what they are. Most people's awareness will advance 1 or 2 levels in their lifetime. What does it mean to recognize your delusions? When you were a child, did your parents tell you that Santa Claus brought presents on Christmas Day? Yeah, I said. I believed in Santa until kindergarten, when the other kids started talking. Then I realized Santa couldn't get to all those homes in one night. Now, one interesting thing I want to point out here, this is kind of a personal anecdote, but I actually wasn't taught that Santa Claus was real. Now, here's the interesting thing. So some people might not know this. If you watched my work for a while, you know that I grew up in an extremely religious household, and I suffer from religious trauma syndrome. So I grew up under mainstream Christianity, and here's a really kind of nefarious thing. It wasn't intentionally nefarious, but it was nefarious nonetheless. And that is, my mother did not teach me that Santa was real. And the reason why my mother didn't teach me that Santa was real, she told me this. She told me, you know, a lot of parents tell their kids that Santa is real, but I'm not going to tell you that Santa is real. Santa doesn't exist. And the reason why that I'm telling you this is because, if you get older and then realize that Santa doesn't exist and you thought that I was lying to you, then you might think that Jesus isn't real either. Because you think, oh, well, if my parents were lying to me about Santa, maybe they were lying to me about Jesus too. So you see how it's very, very psychologically manipulative, not intentionally, but still, nonetheless, psychologically manipulative to really entrap one into a religious mindset, even going so far as to say, see, look, I tell you the truth. Anyway, let's continue. Your intelligence, this is the old man speaking, your intelligence did not change at the moment you realized that Santa Claus was a harmless fantasy. Your math and verbal skills stayed the same, but your awareness increased. You were suddenly aware that stories from credible sources, in this case your parents, could be completely made up. And from the moment of that realization, you could never see the world the same way because your awareness of reality changed. And I want to point out that very important fact that the moment that you had this realization, you could never see the world in the same way. Your awareness of reality changed. Likewise, when you step into a higher level of consciousness, you never see reality the same way. It's like stepping into a completely different world. And this is why it's so important in Hyperionism to understand the avatar, monadic, and absolute perspectives, because each time you reach one of those higher levels, your world will drastically and dramatically change. And really, I mean, people don't take that seriously or really think that it does, but it absolutely does. Imagine a dog and a human. A dog and a human both visually experience reality in the same way. I mean, not really. Of course, they have different, their genetic makeup is different, so the experience of color and all that is different. But You get what I'm saying. More or less, it's more or less the same experience. But imagine a dog that was suddenly at the level of awareness that a human was. It would be like that dog was stepping into a new world. Everything would be completely different. Even though nothing physically changed, it would be like stepping into a new world. Same thing. Same thing when you start to understand these new perspectives, like monadic and absolute in Hyperianism. You step into a dramatically different world. So from the moment of that realization, you could never see the world the same way because your awareness of reality changed. I guess it did. And in school, did you learn that the Native Americans and the Pilgrims got together to celebrate what became Thanksgiving in the United States? Yeah. You figured it must be true because it was written in a book and because your teachers said that it happened. You were in school for the specific purpose of learning truth. It was reasonable to believe you were getting it. But scholars now tell us that a first Thanksgiving with Pilgrims and Native Americans never happened. Like Santa Claus, much of what we regard as history is simply made up. In your examples, there's always learning. That seems like intelligence to me, not awareness. The old man replies, awareness is about unlearning. It is the recognition that you don't know as much as you thought you knew. And okay, so here's the thing. Remember, this is a fiction story, so I'm not saying that everything in here is right, but this is a very important part, that awareness is about unlearning. So to reach a higher level of consciousness, it is both about unlearning and learning at the same time. So this is what I talk about in my book, The Metaphorical Suicide. My entire book, The Metaphorical Suicide, the reason why it's called The Metaphorical Suicide, because it's about destroying yourself, metaphorically, by getting rid and unlearning everything that you thought to be true. So it's about discarding all your false beliefs until you reach a true foundation. But then it is also about structuring your mind in such a way that you can then reach a higher level of awareness. So in this story, and it's a very, very good story, awareness is all about unlearning. But I just want to make it clear that in actuality, it is both about unlearning and learning as well. So you need to have both. So I also did a video about this called Are You Waking Up or Going Crazy? It's a video you can watch. But my book, The Metaphorical Suicide, is all about this process of unlearning so that you may be free to then create yourself. It's a process of both destruction and creation. So he described what he called the 5 levels of awareness and said that all humans experience the first level of awareness at birth. That is when you first become aware that you exist. In the second level of awareness, you understand that other people exist. You believe most of what you are told by authority figures. You accept the belief system in which you are raised. And how, so, according to this book, again, remember, I'm not saying this book is completely accurate, but so according to this book, that's the second level. Now, how many people exist in this state? So many people just are completely and totally chained and stuck in the particular reality tunnel that was installed by other people, by their family, by their teachers, by authority figures. And they just believe what they're told, and that's it. No autonomy whatsoever. At the third level of awareness, you recognize that humans are often wrong about the things they believe. You feel that you might be wrong about some of your beliefs, but you don't know which ones. Despite your doubts, you still find comfort in your beliefs. The fourth level is skepticism. You believe the scientific method is the best measure of what is true. And you believe you have a good working grasp of truth, thanks to science, your logic, and your senses. You are arrogant when it comes to dealing with people in level 2 and 3. And so this would be the level of scientific materialists, atheists, empiricists. They believe in empiricism, what they can touch, taste, hear, see, smell, what they are able to do physical experiments upon. And yeah, they often are very, arrogant and whatnot. So, that's a very big generalization, by the way, based on this particular narrative. But you can see this sort of progression of the empirical mindset that we often talk about and that needs to be transcended, because the empirical mindset only takes into account the physical, the empirical, what can be seen, what can be heard, what can be touched, what can be smelled, what an experiment can be done upon physically. And of course, we know that reality, being mental, must go beyond this. Now, and of course, that doesn't mean we turn to woo-woo or anything like that. It means that we can use the rationalist methods of using our minds, using rationalism, using reason, using mathematics, etc. So the fifth level of awareness is the avatar. The avatar understands that the mind is an illusion generator, not a window to reality. The avatar recognizes science as a belief system, albeit a useful one. An avatar is aware of God's power as expressed in probability and the inevitable recombination of God consciousness. So, also again, I want to remind you that this book uses the word avatar completely different than how we use it. So, but according to this book, the fifth level understands that the mind is an illusion generator, not a window to reality. So is this true? Well, in Hyperianism, the mind can be an illusion generator, but it can also give us access to true reality, depending on how we use it. But for the vast majority of people, the mind does begin to organize itself to believe in illusions. Our bodies are what provide us with sensory data, which are absolutely illusion generators. So the brain is absolutely an illusion generator. But remember, in Hyperianism, the mind and brain are different things. So the mind is an eternal mind, it's a soul, it's a monad, it exists outside space and time and links to the brain. So the brain is, yes, it is an illusion generator. The brain is very much like a VR headset that you put on. When you put on a VR headset, you get immersed into a game world. When you, as a monadic mind or a soul, linked to a body, an avatar that we call in Hyperianism, and a brain, you get immersed in the physical world. So your brain and body act like the VR headset that immerses you in the physical world. It's providing you with all this information. Now, this information is an illusion. It does generate an illusion. And the reason why it generates an illusion is because it's giving you only partial information. The reason why it only gives you partial information is because the goal is to survive. And if you had access to all information at once, a predator that was tuned into its localized environment would be easily able to, eat you. And natural selection takes care of the rest. So the important thing to take away from this is that, yes, the body is an illusion generator, and then you have your mind that is taking in the information and then trying to piece together a coherent worldview, or in Hyperianism, what we call a reality tunnel. So you're taking in all this information provided by the senses, and your mind is going to try and organize it and make sense of it. And yes, this often results in an illusion, something that is not accurate. But we can use our minds to access true reality. So the way to understand this is, again, to go back to the VR headset analogy. Imagine that you put on a VR headset, but imagine that you don't know that you're wearing a VR headset. Imagine you have, somehow you are hardwired into that VR headset, so you don't know that you're wearing one. So you're taking in all this information provided to you by the VR headset about this game world, but your mind is going to try and organize this information into something discernible. And so it is going to think, oh, well, it's real. So your mind will think that that's a real world. But you would be able to also use your mind to deduce that it wasn't real if you put your mind to it and really did so properly. If you reasoned properly, you could even, without ever taking the VR headset out, you could reason your way to realize that it wasn't real. Now, likewise, in this world that we exist in, we're immersed in this very, immersive experience that our minds try to understand. And many people generate all different kinds of illusions about this experience we're having together. Some people's minds put this information together and come up with the idea, oh, well, maybe a god in the sky created it. Another person tries to put this information together and thinks, oh, well, maybe, it was all a random accident, like the atheistic materialist stance. Other people will have ideas from Eastern religion, but you can see we're all provided with this sensory data, and our minds then try to form some sort of conceptual scheme to make sense of this. And so, but that being said, we can go past the illusion and get to true reality and get to ultimate reality. We can bypass the illusions. And we can do that through Hyperianism and understanding reason and the truth of existence, that reality is mental. And we can do this by understanding reason, by understanding ontological mathematics, by getting to the philosophical ground, to the necessary truths of existence. So, again, just to recap here, and I hate that they used the word avatar, just because I know it's going to get a little confusing, because we use the word avatar in a completely different way. Just keep that in mind. I know I keep saying it a lot, but keep that in mind. So the fifth level of awareness is the avatar. The avatar understands that the mind is an illusion generator, not a window to reality. Remember, in Hyperianism, the mind and brain are different. The mind can generate an illusion, but it can also be a window to reality. Depends how you use it. The avatar recognizes science as a belief system, albeit a useful one. And that's very, very true. An avatar is aware of God's power as expressed in probability and the inevitable recombination of God's consciousness. Now again, probability, no, we can toss that out. But the inevitable recombination of God, and that is what we talk about in Hyperianism. There is no God in the sky. We are God. We are all God. And we have fractured ourselves and are now experiencing ourselves in a multiplicity of particular viewpoints. And as we reach, begin to progress and evolve mentally and as a collective, this is the coming online of God consciousness, or in Hyperianism, we call this absolute awareness. You can also understand this as a network consciousness, a consciousness network made up of many minds of that have attained absolute awareness working together cohesively. It is the opening of the great eye. It is the awakening of God here on earth. And that's exactly the goal of Hyperianism. is to awaken the absolute, which is us, through ourselves by raising the consciousness of humanity to the level where they understand what they are, and then creating a society of the divine to elevate the rest of the world and create that higher consciousness collective. So the individual replies, "I think I'm a 4th level," I said. And the old man replied, "Yes, you are a 4th," he confirmed. And the guy replies, "But now that you've told me all your secrets from the 5th level, maybe I get bumped up a level. Is that how it works?" "No," he said. "Awareness does not come from receiving new information. It comes from rejecting old information. You still cling to your 4th level delusions." This is really important. It's a great book, by the way. Highly recommend it. Now, this is really important. So awareness does not come from receiving new information. It comes from rejecting old information. So once again, it's actually both. It's about first rejecting old information and then receiving new information. But being able to truly understand it and integrate it. And, I tell this people all the time, I make these videos and we have this movement and everything. And you can't really, people often think, oh, I understand, the monadic perspective, or I have absolute awareness now because they watch a couple of my videos. But it's not just about receiving new information. You have to destroy your old reality tunnels, destroy your old paradigms, destroy your old schemas, and truly step into it. It's something that you have to truly step into. And it takes time, it takes hard work, it takes the destruction of your old self, metaphorically, of course, and the stepping into a new perspective. I mean, but this part here, you still cling to your 4th level delusions. That's extremely important. You can't, if you sort of imagine, people are stuck in this box, and that box they're in are their delusions, and you can't expand to a higher level of awareness, a higher level of consciousness. You can't expand to a higher level of consciousness without first breaking down those walls and breaking that box. And that is incredibly difficult for most people. For most people, they are so tied to their beliefs that they can't do it, because you are destroying yourself. People identify with their beliefs so much that they would rather cling to them rather than get rid of faulty programming to step into a higher level of understanding. "I feel vaguely insulted," I joked. "You shouldn't. There is no implied good or bad about one's level of awareness. No level is better or worse than any other level. People enjoy happiness at every level, and they contribute to society at every level." "Well, that sounds very charitable," I said. "But I notice your level has the highest number. That's obviously the good one. You must be feeling a bit smug." "There is no good or bad in anything, just differences in usefulness. People at all levels have the same potential for being useful." "But you have to feel glad you're not on one of the other levels." "No. Happiness comes more easily at the other levels. Awareness has its price. An avatar can find happiness only in serving." Now, I want to mention this too, that, and this is an important point. Happiness is a difficult thing. And yes, often achieving higher levels of consciousness, happiness doesn't automatically come with that. And because you can often step into, did I do a video about this? I'm trying to think if I did. But I can't remember if I did or not. But anyway, one can often feel depressed when they reach a higher level of consciousness. Because you begin to see the awful state of the world. And by understanding and recognizing the awful state, one can feel a heaviness, a sadness with that. So it is true that with awareness can come a price. And this isn't necessarily the case. And you can achieve happiness in many other ways. And one of the most gratifying levels of happiness that one achieves at a higher level is by forming a community with like-minded individuals. That's why I love this community so much, and I love hanging out with you guys, because that's what we're doing. That's the antidote to the sadness that can come from seeing the awful state of the world, because the world is very fractured. When you reach a higher level, you automatically want to form a community, because that's what we're doing. We are forming a collective as we level up ourselves and also form a collective consciousness. We have individual consciousness and the collective conscious. The philosopher Hegel called this spirit. That is the collective level of consciousness. And so we automatically are striving to create, once we reach that level, a collective. And so an immense amount of happiness and satisfaction comes from establishing a collective, comes from establishing that community of like-minded individuals, because the reason why sadness can often occur is because, remember, we are all part of a network, but this world doesn't act like a network. So we're all these individual nodes, and once you attain a higher level of awareness, you realize, oh, we're all part of a collective. We're all part of a network. But none of the nodes are working together. They're all fighting each other. They're all killing each other. They're all hating each other. And that's where sadness can come in. But once you find those who are also aware that we're in a network and begin forming that collective together, that's when happiness comes. That's when satisfaction comes. And that's why creating a society of the divine is so important, because this world is not connected. It's not, at least not in a healthy way. You're connected via social media and whatnot, but does social media seem like a healthy way of connection, or does it seem a breeding ground for just consumerism and competition, and not healthy? Nothing wrong with healthy competition, but unhealthy competition and hatred and all that. So he asked the old man, "How do you serve?" Sometimes society's delusions get out of balance, and when they conflict, emotions flame out of control. People die. If enough people die, God's recombination is jeopardized. When that happens, the avatar steps in. And so this is basically, according to this story, you have God that's recombining itself, and these people at fifth level of consciousness are here to try and help humanity work together as a collective to recombine. And that's kind of what I was just saying. Those of us who have reached absolute consciousness are here to create a collective. We're here to wake up the world. That's what we say, in Hyperianism all the time. We are here to create a new humanity and a new earth, to establish new terra. And that is the recombination of God, the recombining of God. In our terms, we call this the absolute, or the network consciousness, but we're connecting all the nodes together, all the monadic minds together to form that absolute awareness, to form that network consciousness. You can't wake yourself from a dream. You need someone who is already awake to shake you gently, to whisper in your ear. In a sense, that is what I do. And the guy says, as usual, I'm not sure what you mean. The old man explained. The great leaders in this world are always the least rational among us. They exist at the second level of awareness. Charismatic leaders have a natural ability to bring people into their delusion. They convince people to act against self-interest and pursue the leader's visions of the greater good. Leaders make citizens go to war to seize land they will never live on and to kill people who have different religions. Not all leaders are irrational, I argued. The most effective ones are. You don't often see math geniuses or logic professors becoming great leaders. And this is a great case in point to another parallel to Hyperianism, is that we want to transform the world and organize it in such a way that those who are rational are those who are allowed to be in leadership positions. Because right now, those who are in leadership positions are, yes, extremely irrational and motivated by self-interest. They don't give a damn about the collective. They just want to make more money and conquer more territory or what have you. They don't have the good of the collective in mind. So in a Hyperion new world, in New Terra, leaders must be judged according to 3 categories. And these, it's very important that they fulfill all of these. And these are merit, reason, and compassion. Merit means that you have to actually be qualified for whatever role that you wish to have. Meaning you can't get the position because you know the right people, you have the right friends, or you paid someone off. You can be in the position if you're actually qualified for it. You have the right skills for it. The second category is reason. You have to show that you are rational, that you're not driven by, emotion, and that you understand how reality works. You have to be able to show that you know what existence is rationally. Because if you're going to be a leader, you have to know what reality is, or else you're going to lead people in the wrong direction. Meaning you need to rationally have obtained absolute consciousness. If you haven't rationally obtained absolute consciousness, you are not going to be leading humanity properly. And third, compassion. You must have the good of the collective in mind, not self-interest. You have to be able to have that understanding of what we are, and also compassion, so that what you are doing is motivated by the good of the all. Well, irrational leadership must work. The world seems to be chugging along fairly well overall. Now, I would definitely disagree with that. I mean, the world is disastrous. It's terrible. It's not fine at all. It's hell. It's hell. So, but the old man replies, it works because people's delusions are, on average, in balance. The avatar keeps it so by occasionally introducing new ideas when needed. Do you think an idea can change the world that much? I asked. Ideas are the only things that can change the world. The rest is details. And what an incredibly important point. So you have in this story, you have God that's trying to recombine itself, and these people that are caught in delusions and causing chaos and preventing God's recombination. And then you have these high-level minds that enter the world to help move humanity forward by implementing new ideas. And what a perfect illustration of what we are about. We often, I can't tell you how many times people come and tell me, how are we going to change the world? How are we going to change the world? The way we change the world, the way we establish New Terra, is by spreading ideas, spreading information. Nothing is more powerful than an idea whose time has come. And this is our time. So how are we going to change the world? Those of us whose mission this is to go out there and spread this information. And by doing that, we will be able to establish a brilliant new world as we plant these seeds all across the world by spreading and sharing this information. So that's why I always tell you guys, talk about this stuff, spread this information, share these videos. Because if you don't do it, the seeds will never be planted. And ideas are the only thing that can change the world. So as Hyperions, this is what we are here to do. We are here to raise up and transform humanity and create a world where people are able to, right? Because right now, humanity exists at different levels of consciousness, but they're being blocked from being able to progress because they are being trapped by delusions like mainstream religion. People want to know why I talk against mainstream religion so much, because people do that, right? People go, why do you talk against mainstream religion so much? Why don't you just talk about the positive things? Why don't you just talk about your ideas about consciousness? Why do you talk against mainstream religion? Well, like it was said in this book just now, attaining a higher level is about destroying your delusions. Also, it is also about receiving new information, contrary to this book, but it's also about destroying your delusions. And mainstream religion is a delusion that must be destroyed because it's placing people in these impenetrable mental boxes where they are unable to achieve a new level, no matter what information they hear or come across, because they are unable to expand past the box that they have been placed into by a brainwashing system. So why do I talk against mainstream religion so much? Because I'm about both destruction and creation. And you can't build something new until something old is taken down. That's also what's in my book, The Metaphorical Suicide, as well. You must destroy in order to create. You must get rid of the old to be able to bring forth the new. Of course, it's a little more complicated than that. It's very dialectical, but it's a good way, a good analogy to begin to understand. So we have to banish all the detrimental delusions so that humanity can finally be free to progress and evolve to the next level. Now, I want to say this is a very interesting book. I highly recommend it. Remember, in the little excerpt that we read here, I don't necessarily agree with everything in it, so keep that in mind. It is a story, but it is a very powerful story indeed that I think encapsulates very important parts about what we are here doing in elevating our own consciousness and also spreading information to create a powerful collective new terra and a society of the divine. Oh, and also as a quick note, I want you guys to keep in mind that this is fiction, and so in Hyperionism, we don't have 5 levels like this. It's a lot more complicated than that. And real quick, I do want to give a big shout out to all the supporters on Patreon, especially our top supporters, Kuryo Kumo, Timothy, White Rabbit, John, Rex, Naruda, Rupfu, and Roger, and all our top supporters. Thank you guys so much. If you enjoy my work, consider supporting on Patreon, and you'll get access to our weekly secret live streams.